Decolonizing Wealth Project is an organization that focuses on racial equity. And we do that through imagining or envisioning a world where racial equity has become a societal norm, and new systems and ways of being ensure that everyone can live their best lives, thrive in their cultures, and bring about healing from generations of colonial trauma. Our work really happens through the space of truth and reconciliation. In short, we move money, we do the work of healing, and we do a lot of storytelling to try to shift the narratives that have harmed Indigenous, Black, and communities of color for so long. In the next slide, this is just a little bit more additional information about our work. The three key focus areas are philanthropic giving and practice. So we do have a fund, Liberated Capital, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We seek to disrupt the traditional ways of doing philanthropy and to move untethered resources to communities in a way that is grounded in relationship and grounded in trust. We also focus our work on racial healing. We create spaces and facilitate resources so that we can all find the healing that we need personally and for organizational transformation. We think that healing is a fundamental necessity to the work of advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, again, we harness the power of storytelling traditions to bring visibility to the awesome work that's happening in BIPOC communities. We have several folks on the line from the DWP team. You'll see Trisha there. I'm just going to call out some names that I see: Carlos, John, Kwasi, V, Will Cordery. These are all members of our team that are helping us make this all possible. So hope that you will take a moment to get to know these folks over time as well. So Liberated Capital is our fund at DWP, and our fund works to, as I said, moves untethered capital resources to Black and Indigenous communities. Last year, we granted over $3 million, and this year, our goal is to distribute about $4 million. And we fund explicitly 100% in Black and Indigenous and communities of color, looking for organizations that are led by folks from those communities. Last year, we did a lot of work focused on COVID relief. We also did a lot of work supporting Black-led movement organizing before, during, and after the murder of George Floyd. We also we're not issue specific typically. We are just looking to build power and really center everything we do around economic and racial justice. And so this year, our work has been similar, but we've had a few initiatives, including a recent one that's called the Case for Reparations, where we provided over $1.7 million in resources to support community organizing and advocacy efforts to support reparation campaigns all around the country. We have 23 organizations that are working across many states that are led by Black folks and Native folks who are fighting for the return of money and the return of land to our communities as a form of reparations, including federal work and national work happening to see reparations happen in this country for Black Americans. A little bit about our fund. And now our newest initiative is called the Indigenous Earth Fund. This is an initiative of Liberated Capital. And our goal here is to move general operating support, untethered resources, unrestricted funding to support Indigenous-led organizations, campaigns, coalitions, networks who are focused on work that is really saving, defending, protecting Mother Earth, work that's happening in the climate change and the conservation space. Right now, proposals are live on our website, as you may have seen if you got to this webinar, and our application deadline is October the 18th. We'll talk a little bit more about what that application entails. So why we're doing this? We're doing this because we know that Indigenous people have been for a long time and are currently really the stewards of our planet, of Mother Earth. We take care of this land, and we have for generations. And we also know that Indigenous leadership is critical even more in this moment as the climate crisis is at an all-time high. And so this is an effort to really support and lift up the leadership that's been there, that's been doing this. We also know that in the space of philanthropy, climate is a very hot issue right now. Conservation efforts are really hot, yet our communities, indigenous communities, have not benefited from that flow of capital. We've always been marginalized by the philanthropic industry. And so this initiative is an effort to lift up indigenous leadership and also to grow and to funnel resources to our communities from the philanthropic sector that has not been adequately supporting that work. So that's a big part of this, why we're doing this. So again, what is this initiative? We are starting with $1 million. We hope that this will grow to be a multi-year, multi-million-dollar initiative, but we're doing it, again, focusing on Indigenous-led organizations. And I say organizations loosely because we are, happy to support networks, coalitions. You don't have to be an organization that is modeled in a traditional nonprofit kind of infrastructure way to be supported. But folks who are doing the work to build political power, movement building, leading campaigns, we favor and prioritize advocacy efforts focused on climate change and conservation issues in the United States. A little bit more detail, we imagine that the grant awards will range from 50 to 75K for 1 year. This will really depend on, the variables of what comes in and how much, how far we can take the resources. But that's just our estimate early on that we're providing to help you with your planning around resources. We are not prescribing a lot here. If you could jump back for a moment, thank you. We're not prescribing a lot here in terms of what we fund. What we're really looking for is, Indigenous leadership at your organization, and we're looking for work that is about Mother Earth, climate, and conservation. But that work could look like many things. It could look like work that's focused on organizing around climate justice. It could look like protecting water. It could look like fighting against oil pipelines. It could look like food sovereignty efforts. It could look like fighting to preserve and protect land. And so we don't have specific issues under the banner of climate and conservation that we are looking for. We are just looking to the community to see what you're fighting for and what you're working on, and we'll hope and we'll be supporting those efforts. We'll go to the next slide. So a couple of questions about who can apply. We are looking to support Indigenous-led, and we define that as organizations where the majority of the board and the staff identify as Native American or people indigenous to this land that we now call the United States. So the vast majority of the board and the staff should be Native folks, American Indian, indigenous to this land. We also have to pay, because we're working in this colonial structure, grants to 501c3 nonprofit organizations or tribal entities. We can fund tribes. We do accept proposals from fiscal sponsors. If you're a coalition and you don't have a 501c3, you can get a fiscal sponsor to support receiving the money on your behalf. We don't want that to be a limitation for anyone who's doing the work. If you are having trouble in that space because you don't have a 501c3 or a fiscal sponsor, please reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to support around that. We also, what is the money being used for? Again, we're not prescribing this. We are really trusting Indigenous self-determination and work that you all are already doing. And it could be, again, around sustainable food systems, land or forest management, protection and conservation of water sources or natural resources. That's not an exhaustive list. We're just giving some examples there. Our grants are unrestricted. We literally do not care, what you spend the money on. We're not that kind of funder. You can use this money to pay your staff. You can use this money to pay your light bill of your organization. You can use this money for communications work, to hire a consultant. You know best where you need to use this money and how you need this money. So as long as the funds are going toward your campaign work, we don't restrict what you can use the money on. We trust you. We operate through a trust-based model, and we just want to enable you to get the work done. The only criteria in providing funding is that it has to be for a charitable purpose. We can't use these dollars for direct lobbying. It's okay if you're an organization that does lobbying, but these dollars should not be allocated toward those particular expenses. So what are we looking for here? These are our criteria for how we will evaluate proposals. So in your grant applications, we encourage you to really speak to these elements that will really help us determine how to allocate the resources. Again, Indigenous-led, community-driven. So we're looking for Indigenous folks to be on the board, leading organizations, the majority. We're looking for impact, and here are a couple sort of questions that will guide our thinking there. Is your campaign likely to bridge networks between Indigenous people and climate and conservation policymakers? So we are, very focused on supporting grassroots organizations, but we get really excited when we see that there are collaborations and coalitions and connections of work, with policymakers, with tribal leaders, right? Because we know it takes this entire ecosystem of support to really see change happen in a transformative way. We are, looking to see if your work is addressing a breakthrough in this moment around climate and conservation efforts locally or regionally. Will your project make a significant sustainable difference now or in the future? We're looking at, is your project inspirational? Can it inform others? And then finally, does it employ strong strategic movement building strategies and networks to build power for Indigenous communities? So power building is a really core value of our work and what we love to support. So we'll be kind of looking at projects through that lens. And then finally, we're going to be looking at sort of your plan. Is your campaign, is it thoughtful? Is it realistic? Do you express the capacity to actually execute what you're hoping to do? So those are that sort of capacity is kind of a third lens. So how do you apply? Proposals are due October 18th by 5 p.m. PST. We know this is relatively soon. Proposals, the RFP has been open for about a week. But I assure you that this will be the easiest proposal you've ever completed. If you have to write grants, none of us love doing it. I hate doing it. I have to write grants. We are really trying to design a process that is straightforward, that's easy, that will support you. And so you'll see there's just a few questions there. We use a platform called Just Fund. Just Fund is a platform where the link will take you to their platform. You have to create an account there. The link will take you to our specific request for proposals, answer the questions there, and then we'll be able to process it from there. What's great about the Just Fund proposal is when you apply on the Just Fund platform, not only will we see your application, but many other funders will see your application. And so this is sort of an opportunity for us to put your work also in front of hundreds of other donors. And so we hope that you feel like the time that you spend on the application will be worthwhile, because we will use it, of course, but other folks and other funders and donors will see your proposal, and you might get some additional funding from them as well. So as you are working on your proposal, if you have any questions about the platform, the best way to get support there is to email info@justfund.us. The folks at Just Fund provide amazing customer service. They'll be right in touch with you to help you navigate any issues that you may have with that platform. But it's really user friendly. Honestly, as a person who sometimes struggles with technology, I find their platform to be so straightforward, which is why we continue to use Just Fund. They're amazing. And then once you apply, just to be transparent about our process, we will review all the proposals internally to make sure they meet the basic criteria. And then we have an advisory committee, the Indigenous Earth Fund Advisory Committee, A group of all Indigenous Native folks who will be reviewing the proposals and making the grant decisions. We have folks who come from philanthropy. We have folks who are organizers and activists in the climate space. We have folks who have been working with tribes around issues of conservation and climate. We have policymakers and folks who work in journalism and who have written extensively and worked on policies around climate and conservation. So we are really, really excited about this committee. We will be sharing publicly who they are in the near future, but those folks will read proposals and make recommendations about who we ultimately fund. So that is it in a nutshell. We want to just open up the floor. Feel free to chat your question in the box or to raise your hand if you want to vocalize your question. Let me say that you'll see on the RFP, there's a link to a Google Doc which has some frequently asked questions there. So that's a reference point as well. Any questions that come up for you about the work, not the platform, that's just fun who will answer those questions. But if you have any other questions, you can email us at info@decolonizingwealth.com. Any question that comes in about this process, we will respond to you, and we will also add that question and the response to that Google Doc that we will update in real time, so that everyone has access to the same information and questions that are coming in. We have a question. We are the fiscal sponsor of sovereign Inuit for living Arctic, but are not Indigenous led. Will this affect the application? If you are simply serving as a fiscal sponsor, sort of incubating another group, that's totally fine. We'll look at the composition of the group that you are supporting. Thank you for that. Thanks, Scott. Any other questions coming up for folks? Easy breezy. All right, well, we'll give you all some time back. Thank you for joining us today and walking through this new initiative with us. We look forward to learning more about your work and are just grateful to be in community with you. Thank you so much, everybody.